Is a Friedtanzer from Awards Radar, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Jodi Balfour about Ted Lasso. How are you, Jodi?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. What did you know about this show before you joined?
Arguably, too much. No, I'm kidding. I was a big fan and had watched all the seasons or both seasons. Um, and so just that thing of like being an actor joining a show that has such a huge pre-existing fan base and like the characters are so rich and alive and we know so much about them. It was all the things like really exciting and daunting at the same time. I sort of had a similar experience when I worked on The Crown. I was also like already like so much knowledge, so much fandom, particularly for Claire Foy, who I was going to be doing all my work with. So with Juno as well, like such a fan, predating Ted Lasso. So came in with a lot of thoughts, hopes, and feelings. Yeah.
So, what was the process of getting this part?
Fairly straightforward. In terms of being an actor, I self-taped it with my partner in New York in like November. Oh my goodness. The years all blend together now. Basically a long, long time ago. And then waited to hear for a while and then was on a plane to London before I knew, or chatted with Jason at length about the character because there weren't scripts necessarily, or they weren't necessarily all the scripts to read yet. And then yeah, jumped on a plane and there I was, like in the midst of it all.
What did you find easiest to relate to about Jack?
Ooh, certainly not her venture capitalist skills. I'll tell you that much. I really had to like verse myself to the extent that I could with like podcasts and chatting to friends who are like even remotely involved in that world. No, that nothing about that is relatable to my life. But I suppose it was fun to sort of use her innate confidence and sort of willingness and ability to take up space and be who she is. Like I have that in me somewhere, fairly buried. It feels like it is most of the time, but like it was really fun to like bring that part of myself forward. I'd say that really, because truly most everything else about her couldn't be further from my real life.
Do you not consider yourself a love bomber?
Gosh, when Jason sent me the article, I think it's in the New York Times about love bombing, and then we spoke about it, I did have a bit of a reckoning with myself for a second because I love love and I'm such a romantic. I was like, oh my God, have I done versions of this or like the light version of this in my life? Um, no, but I think the conclusion is I'm not a love bomber, but I certainly understand the impulse towards sort of showering someone with your affection and like really wanting someone to know how you feel about them. But it's a really fascinating, I think, taken to its full extreme, and certainly with like verbal love bombing that we see slightly less of here in Ted Lasso, but like I've come to understand as part of it in the broader context of the term. It can get a little dark, I think. It was interesting to learn about.
We don't necessarily see it get dark in the show. I think it more just becomes a bit um I don't know, just there's no personal element to the point, eventually it's just sort of a big show. And I think for a while it seems like it really is just all based on romance, but then as soon as Rebecca says it, it's hard, I think, to see it any different
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm. No, there was so, like the tongue-in-cheek aspect of like I think she mentions flowers but in particular, and then like cut to she gets back from lunch or whatever and there's daisies all over the office. So like yeah, they draw that line for you as well. But yeah, it's interesting with anything like that. It's like you reframe it from over here and suddenly you're like, oh, whoa, wait. Yeah.
So you obviously came in knowing what your arc was going to be, but I imagine audiences will be quite disappointed, either that this didn't work out, that it took away from hopes of, Healy and Roy or anything. Do you feel like there's going to be a backlash to this character who I think was very likable at first?
I know. I mean, it's such a two-folded thing for me because it's kind of an acting dream to have such a fun arc to play and to sort of like have this mislead almost, and I suppose the way to think about it in terms of real humans in real life is that like we all contain multitudes, and like someone who has the best of intentions and really does care for this person can also have a limit to like what they're capable of tolerating. And it was interesting because I obviously don't condone the way Jack behaves or her point of view on the situation, but I have done enough therapy in my own life and understand enough about like human psychology to also be able to acknowledge that like a lot of it is coming from her own stuff. It's actually not about Healy in that moment. It's more indicative of her trauma and her like family makeup and the expectations she feels that are put on her. And it's just really disappointing.
Well, if it helps, I think the best comparison character-wise on Ted Lasso might be Nate, who's somebody who like was so endearing at the start, and then everyone was so mad at him. And right now, it seems from what I've seen that we're liking him again, and so I'm happy to see that. So I think maybe things will work out for Jack.
Isn't it incredible how they do that? Like you genuinely feel for this man that's behaving terribly for the most part. Like it's amazing.
So how much you really didn't interact with a lot of the other main cast members? How much were you aware of what was going on aside from just being on the same set as everyone?
I mean, of course, I read all the scripts, so I was very invested in like all the storylines. But no, we were so siloed. Trying to think, there was the first episode I'm in, episode 4. I go to the match, and so there was that fun scene to do with Jeremy and Hannah and the others. But otherwise, yeah, it was really like Juno Fest for me, which I am not complaining about. She's such an incredible actor to work opposite and a person to hang out with. So. But yeah, it was bizarre. I think I don't even know who I mean, I saw Brett a fair amount because he's on set a bunch, being a producer on the show and a writer on the show. And obviously Jason. But yeah, we were in our own little bubble.
We also do get to share some scenes with Katie Wicks, who I think is very underrated as Barbara.
Goodness. Just everybody work with, hire, hang out with Katie Wicks, like a funniest person. She kills me. That was like one of the biggest challenges, is not just like laughing at everything she said. Yeah, what a joy.
And I'm sure that was also true with Ambreen, the scenes with Shandy when she just says the most ridiculous things.
Yeah, truly, what a character. Yeah.
Well, the first hint of romance, I think, really comes from, having to clean up all that poop. Was that how much of that is visual effects? What it was actually used in terms of the scene itself?
There was a lamb. But it's so funny. I remember about that day, we did all our stuff, our reactions before the lamb came in. And then at the end of the day, they popped onto the lamb. And I remember really being like, the minute I saw the lamb, I was like, oh no, it's so cute. Like I just reacted with pure disgust and disdain and like, get this thing out of here. But it was, which is also, I think, correct ultimately, because like the stench alone was so off-putting. But truly, when we saw the lamb, I was like, just give it to me. Can I hold it? I want it. Like it was the total opposite from what we had been playing mere moments before. No, there was a lamb, there was poop. Yeah, truly no CGI used for that one, I don't think.
If you had been able to share scenes with somebody else from the ensemble, who would it have been? If you had to pick one person.
What a question. They're all so good. I don't know. I love them all. You know what? I would like to be in a scene with the Diamond Dogs. I'd like to be a diamond dog for a second. I think that would be my answer, because then I get the best of all the things. Yeah.
I think Ted would be open to that. I don't know about everybody else, but he probably,
Yeah.
So, assuming that you haven't read the scripts for the future episodes,
Yeah. No.
what do you want for Healy now that Jack's out of the picture? What are you hoping happens with her?
Oh. The romantic in me wants to believe that there's a future for her and Roy, because I just like love them together so much. But then I also think like maybe she gets to just be on her own for a sec. That would be my healthy human hope for her, is that like take a sec and like get to hang out with yourself and plug back into who you are and figure out what you want. And that she gets to keep doing what she's so good at, despite what Jack might say to the board and what might happen ultimately. Yeah, I hope she gets to keep blazing the trail she's been blazing.
Well, before this episode comes out, have you heard any reactions or anything surprising to how people perceive Jack?
I think I wasn't as I wasn't expecting people to embrace this romance as much as they seem to have. Like, you know, coming in after the Jamie romance, the Roy romance, like there's so much established fandom for those two things that I was like, oh, people are gonna feel like I'm just in the way, you know. But no, it's been so lovely to see at least the things I've seen and read that like people are into Keely and Jack, and yeah, that was a surprise.
Right. You also mentioned before guest starring on The Crown, and I actually found out about the opportunity to speak with you before I had seen any of season 3. So I was like, "Oh, she played Jackie Kennedy in The Crown. I wonder what she's going to be doing in Ted Lasso." Do you like the idea of coming on board these very popular shows just for a short time, or is it better to be a fuller part of something like For All Mankind?
I mean, it's never, I wish I could say it's all by design. It isn't really, you know, these opportunities come your way, and on a show like The Crown or the show like Ted Lasso, it's like impossible not to want to get to play in that world. But yeah, I really like the thing about making television versus film is like you've really become a part of a family, and there's like the consistency and the building something together, the teamwork that creates, and a sense of community that creates is like one of my favorite things about what we do. So there is an added something special about like being there from the ground up on a show, from the beginning and as a regular, that I just love. But not to diminish these experiences, they're just different things, you know. You really are popping into, you're like subbing, if to use a sports analogy, since we're talking about a sports show, it's truly like you're a sub, you know. You like get subbed in and you want to like keep the team playing their best and like bring in some new energy and maybe help them score some goals, but ultimately you're not there for every practice and everything. Like you really are a guest. Just different things.
I appreciate the use of the sports analogy because I think that there is certainly a subset of people who are excited about sports watch show. And from what I spoke to Brendan Hunt a while ago, and he said he's the only one
Oh,
who actually cares about like soccer and football. Like he's no one else really, they like sports, but that like he's the only one who really knows the
I
rules and
think
everything, and they
he
don't
went
really
to
listen
like
to.
while I was in London, I just kept hearing about Brendan and Jason going to all these actual football games on the weekends. I was like, oh wow, okay, they really are into the sport. But maybe that was Brendan dragging Jason along. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you have coming up that you want to share right now?
Yeah, I just finished working on this incredible film in Ireland with Anthony Hopkins, with Sir Anthony Hopkins, which was like kind of a dream come true. I'm the like 10-year-old in me still can't really believe that happened. Many a Anthony Hopkins fist bump and side hug, and my body is still sort of processing that. Um, yeah, it was just so magic, and I think it's going to be a really interesting, special movie. And it really shines a light on two women that haven't often been thoroughly included in the Freud story, which is his daughter Anna Freud and the character I played, Dorothy Burlingham, who is an American, actually the heiress of the Tiffany empire. And she, particularly Dorothy, is like very little understood and little known, and particularly in terms of her contribution to child psychology and sort of the Freudian way of thinking about psychology. So I'm excited about that. It was a really beautiful experience too. The movie's called Freud's Last Session, and I think it'll be coming out sooner rather than later. So yeah.
Well, before I let you go, I'll ask, do you enjoy doing accent work?
I mean, I have to, but I do. I really do. I'm such an oral person. But you know, it's been this is the first time on Ted Lasso I've ever gotten to work in my own accent since leaving South Africa. And it was such a trip. Like my brain now is so wired to think work or acting, accent. It like took a minute for me to actually feel like I was doing my job, even though I was using my own voice. But it was awesome. I loved it. But equally, I love doing dialects. It's such a fun part of the job.
I'll just share that I can't believe it now, but before, way before Ted Lasso, when I saw Juno Temple in a few films, she was playing an American. I didn't realize she wasn't American, but now, given just how thick her accent is, and now you can hear it, I can't believe that I ever thought that.
Yeah, yeah, no, she's, I mean, incredible. She's slightly hamming it up, obviously, on Ted Lasso. Like it's a little bit of an exaggeration of her actual sound, but it's so good. It's so good. My favorite is to try to do Phil Dunster, to do Jamie Tartt's accent, because what that line recently, it's a movie. It's too good. It's truly insane sounding, not to be rude about that. It's an incredible accent. It's just like your ear is like, what? Yeah, it's so cool.
Well, thank you so much, Jodi, for taking a few minutes to speak with me, and I hope that people will be happy with how things turned out, even if it wasn't, the romance it could have been.
We'll see. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
Dave.
much. Very nice to meet you.
You too.